Let me ask Heidi if she's joining.
Okay. There's Robin. Just if Heidi comes in, remind me, Sean, okay, to get her permission when she comes on. Robin, hi. Hi.
Finally got on. Thank you.
We wanted to go ahead and start without you, but they wouldn't let me. They were like, no way, not until Robin gets here. All right. I'm going to be recording this. It'll be posted for public consumption, criticism, and applause. So anybody got it? Everybody okay with that? Nod your head if you're okay with that. Okay, good, good. And if Heidi comes on or anybody else, please, y'all help me remember to get their permission. All right. I'm sorry about last week. The dog is probably okay. He's doing well, but you know, if it's not cancer or something like that, then it's just a matter of figuring out what he's allergic to and not doing that, and we should be okay. If it is one of those things, it's a matter of figuring that out and doing what we can on that also. But so far, we just don't know for sure. But I apologize. He's kind of a big part of our lives around here, and it got really nasty there, and we had to do something. It's just one of those things. So we were going to have a couple of things, and one of them was there was a question from Michelle and James about something. I'm trying to decide whether to do that first. The other one was we left last session with some issues and thoughts about families and family programs and those kind of things. And I have several topics. Let me run through those real quickly. Things. The helping families to understand the bio-behavioral issues in this disease, how important that is and how to get it done, okay? Number two, specific schedules that have worked, schedules that don't work historically, what, why, etc. And things you may be finding right now. All of this, everything I'm saying, you may be finding some things right now that are working really well for you. And the point to this is not just me, but to share what we're finding. A big one, and we could do days worth of this, is on parental use, families who use. The next one is enthusiasm in the family group. We always talk about how to keep the kids engaged. They're actually a lot easier than the families, and it's just as important to keep the families engaged, my opinion anyway. Special intro and exit groups that can be created in family programs, and how to do it, what has worked in the past, etc. Siblings groups and process for other family members besides just the managing parents. And then traditions, how to build traditions into it, what place does that play, etc. So, and then Michelle they had a question about nonprofit versus profit making and those kind of things. Is that right, Michelle? Did I phrase that right?
Yeah, that's correct. What the advantages and disadvantages are of nonprofit versus profit, or a combination of the two. Right.
So let's take that question first. Y'all okay with that? Again, let me give you the history, and then other people with other experiences and all, I would love to hear it. The early days, PDAP was all nonprofit, but at that time, they had an opportunity. What happened was actually a couple of PhD level therapists, psychologists, wanted to do a residential program in a hospital. And they believed in what PDAP was doing. They thought it was really cool. And so they came to Meehan, the guy who was running the program then, and then to the board and said, we'd like, if you'll refer to us, we will change our program to match up with what you're doing. And what that change meant was they started hiring recovery-based people, what we would now call recovery. Well, the levels of training were so huge at that time that there was kind of a combination. It would be recovery professionals, but it would also have been LCDCs, or licensed chemical dependency counts, same levels, real high levels of training were going on, not in the same venues as what we have right now, but they were big, enough. If you compared it, that's what you would have. Senior counselors could easily, and some counselors could easily have passed and been given a licensed chemical dependency counselor here in Texas. That means you've got 300 hours of 300 classroom hours that are usually college hours. They're equal to college. It's not 300 college hours, it's 300 classroom hours. That's about 20 classes, maybe 15 classes, college classes. Then they also had, now here you have, well, it's 300 practical hours, 270 classroom hours, and then there's 4 years of internship and all sorts of stuff that goes into an LCDC here. And a lot of those counselors that were hired by that hospital, it was a hospital, Houston International Hospital was the name of it. A lot of those counselors that were hired had that much training. Okay, now it was all in-house and being done in-house, but they had that much training. But even with that much training, that had never happened before. There was nothing. There were in 1971 and 72 and 73, there were no hospitals that had recovering counselors on the floor working with adolescents who were part of an extended care system, that was paid and professional and trained, that thing. So that didn't exist. So this was a major change and a major break from what was being done mental health wise at that time for these two PhDs. Dr. Fred Kotzen and Dr. Art Pfeiffer were their names. And they said, we will hire some of these people, put them on the floor in the hospitals next to the traditional therapy personnel, LMSWs, LPCs, those kinds of things. In those days, they didn't have LPCs either. LMSWs and those kind of things. Psychologists, what they call psychologists, master's level. And then they incorporated some other things. Well, this organization, going to the question, was profit making. Okay, that was a profit making organization. So you had a nonprofit organization and a profit making organization. The amount of time required from the nonprofit organization to serve the needs of that element, that profit making, were considerable. So they found ways to reimburse back and forth. All right. The downside of that is when PDAP fell under criticism, one of the things they were criticized for, they considered it, they didn't have bounties. There were no laws about bounties for referrals or anything else. But they threw at PDAP that, oh, you were paying for referrals. Okay, you were getting paid, rather. You were getting paid. The nonprofit was getting paid for referrals to a profit-making organization. All right. The good news is it was left as a criticism and no charges, no court cases, no nothing. Because, and this gets to your question, if you're going to do a combination of profit-making and nonprofit, you have to be very careful about documenting the transference of all dollars in all directions at all times. If you are not, anybody who wants to criticize is going to go after that. And if you're not covered, it's going to mess you up. One of the big things that you have to be very careful about is that in a nonprofit, somebody collecting a check of any kind must not be on the board. That will protect you. Okay, if money goes to the board members of the nonprofit, then it creates a conflict of interest, at least a seeming conflict of interest, and in fact, it may actually be one. So you have to be very careful about that. All right. all profit making. Well, see, Lifeway in, oh golly, between 1985 and oh gosh, I want to say all the way up to 1990 was all profit making. There were no nonprofit elements at that time. And it owned the hospital. Well, we still call them hospital. Now you call them resident. It owned the residential programs. It owned the houses. It owned a whole lot of stuff. All right. About 1992, there was a nonprofit element that was created. I think it was 92. And don't quote me exactly on those dates, but it was around that time a nonprofit element was created, but it was created specifically for funneling dollars specifically to the clients so they could take part in certain things that they might not be able to afford, or activities that just couldn't be done any other ways. No monies at all went between the two organizations, you know, forever and ever and ever, actually. And that grew, and so you've got all three things, you know, all three different directions. The only one that was ever attacked was the PDAP thing, and that was because they were going after anything and everything they could to criticize and then blame and all sorts of stuff. Y'all do realize we work in a field that people who don't want to hear what we've got to say, which is typical of the disease, will look for reasons why we are uncredible, dastardly, dirty goobers. So the organization can get thrown into that same thing, and this is a way it can happen. So whatever you're doing, make sure that you've covered and do it well. And you also want to do it right. You want to be right. You don't want to do something that's not honest and honorable and all those kind of things.
Are there things that a for-profit business can do that a nonprofit could not do?
No.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll just tell you what we're
But I'll
facing.
tell you what a nonprofit can do.
What's that?
That won't happen if you own a profit making. Okay? A nonprofit can fire you.
And I think that's okay. What we're looking at is we set up the for-profit, we're in process for setting up the nonprofit, and we just moved one kid out of the house. Our oldest just moved out, and we're looking at, you know, in 5 or 6 years, we want to be set free. And how do we do that if we have a for-profit in our names versus a nonprofit that has a board? So the continuation feels more
profit making. In profit making, you sell it, okay, to somebody else, and there's a lot of ways to structure that. And in nonprofit, you don't have that option though. If you're going to go nonprofit, what you might want to do is, and this is a strictly, you know, something for the people who are risking time and effort and everything else. What you might want to do is set up some sort of a retirement plan, you know, that when you retire, you'll get some sort of a compensation for the time you put in, you know, that kind of thing. And some money set aside for that. That is not what I did. I didn't do that, probably should have. But it just wasn't the way my head worked. And there's something to be said for that. It depends on how your head works too, and what how you work. I'll tell you this: when you let one go, you have to truly let it go. And you may, I mean, it can get really scary, really rough, really sad, you know, all those kind of things. But you have to do that. In profit making, you know, again, it's the same kind of thing, but be sure to, again, I want to tell you that you get a board member that is influential and decides they know what they're doing more than you do and they want to get rid of you, they can sure do it in a nonprofit situation.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep.
I'll tell you that right up front. It can get really rough. You can have a client throw some sort of gobbledygook at you, and it'll get used in whatever, board politics are going on, and you can find yourself, being asked to leave. I've never had that. That's part of the reason why.
Have you been involved or seen a situation where they combined at some point? Or like, let's say we start it with the nonprofit and the for-profit, and when we're ready to move on, the nonprofit buys the for-profit?
I've seen it the other way.
Okay.
I've seen it the other way. But I can tell you it could be done the way you're talking about.
Okay.
Could
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Does that help a little bit?
That helps a lot. Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions or observations about that question? All right. Okay, so where do you want to start? How about the top of the list? And who do I need to add something to the list on the families than what I already covered in that list? Anybody got an addition?
I thought your list was covered a lot. It was good.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about the biobehavioral element real quick. When I say the most important thing to begin with is that you hire staff, and if they're not trained in the facts about this disease, get them trained. And that is for all levels. That is not just, hold on, Mike's coming back in. That is not just recovery staff, recovery level staff. It is also LMSWs, LPCs, PhDs. Make sure they know what we're looking at. All right. My work with the opioid bill, there was a large percentage of the dollars that were granted to opioid that were for retraining professionals in the field on the facts about this disease, because they don't know it. Psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, and it's the biological side that they don't quite get. All right, so number one, make sure that you train your people on the biological side, that they understand what these substances do to the brain, how destructive they are, how age affects that destruction rate, and what are the ties to the development of the behavioral side, the aberrant psychology. Why do people who get high get crazy? And so, how does it happen, right? Because you'll have families that want to focus all on behavior, and it will really, really undermine their ability to be compassionate for the facts of the disease. The facts of the disease are we have brain damage, and if that brain damage came from getting thrown through the windshield of a car, even though you chose not to put on your seatbelt, they would have massive amounts of compassion, understanding, patience, and all sorts of stuff. But because the brain damage came from substance use, if they don't grab hold of that this is as real a thing, that compassion, the fear, all of those things don't lie, and you need those elements. So this is a super, super important thing, to get across to families. I'm going to drop down now. First of all, are there any questions about what I'm talking about here? Everybody in agreement?
A question, I think Heidi might want to get in. Is she trying to get in?
Yeah,
I'm in now. Thank you. Thanks.
Hey, Heidi.
That was creepy. What just happened? I don't see you.
We're moving towards Halloween.
That's there you are.
Holy cow!
You
just where you are. Oh my gosh! You're at Sean's waterfront after a storm. It's a weird after the apocalypse. Anyway, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm sorry I didn't get the Zoom invitation. I actually was just hunting through my my junk mail folder to see if it ended up
Was
in
it
there,
there?
but Sean forwarded it. I didn't see it. I didn't see it.
I don't get this.
I didn't see mine and Heidi's name on the big long list from the one that
It's
you,
just weird. I don't get it.
I know.
I don't get it. How did you get it though, Sean? Oh, I resent
You
it to
resent it to me.
Oh yeah. Okay. All right.
Somehow just,
And when I resent though to you, what reason why I resent it is I also didn't see your name on the big long list, and I don't know why that is. So let me make a note.
New Hampshire's just no
I
longer.
did put yours on, but Heidi, I
Same
didn't know
crap.
yours. Yeah, well, who cares about New Hampshire? I mean, come on. No. Let me put. But Sean, I've got yours on. Let me make a note. Put Heidi on.
Put Sean and Heidi
I
plus
put
one.
you on.
back
When I
on the list.
resent it, that was because I put you on it.
Yeah.
But I need to go ahead and put Heidi on Megan.
Yeah.
Thank you. And John, I might send you a few more names because it's
Please do.
looking like we might have 2 APGs starting in New Hampshire very, very soon.
Did they get the funding, Heidi?
Well, it's a long story, but
Oh.
they haven't received an official letter award, but we got an email saying if we didn't get a rejection letter, then
That's a good sign.
we can assume that we got funded. So we're assuming. Right.
That is so funny. Send out a letter saying if you didn't get a rejection notice.
Woohoo!
We're not promising, but you can assume you're going to get. That's just so bureaucracy. Hello. Well, Heidi, we are recording this. Are you okay with that? It will be for public consumption and all that kind of stuff. Okay. All right. We had just gone through some stuff on how to organize between profit making and nonprofit combinations, what to watch out for, things to do, etc. And we had gone into families part 2. And I'd listed as some topics. And one of the very first one was understanding the biobehavioral nature of the disease. How important is that for families to do that and how to pull it off, and so to begin with, I just went over some of the basic facts, that we know about this disease, that it is brain damage that leads to development of aberrant psychology and behaviors that are born from that psychology. And I'm using those terms, in a general sense. And we were talking about how important it is, first of all, before you worry about your membership and your families understanding it, how important it is for your staff to have that, because you'll have staff come in with all sorts of preconceived ideas, and they can be very, very problematic to what you're trying to do. So I would suggest, first of all, that you do some screening in your initial hiring to make sure what they have in their mind as how they think this disease works and how that will match up with what you're going to be doing in your program. Then once you've established that with your families, you can start to build some vehicles to get the biobehavioral facts about this disease across to them. Let me give you an example. What comes first? The trauma or the disease? Okay? And it can be very, very confusing for a family. Do you have to have trauma to have this disease? Is trauma created after you've gotten the disease? Is it possible to have this disease before you break the neurotransmitter regulation system in the brain? Okay, all of these kind of things, and it confuses families. And if staff is confused on this, it can be very, very problematic. So make sure you train your staff really, really strong on the connections between the neurology and the psychology of the disease, and help them really, really get a hold of it. One of the big issues in medically assisted treatment is, how does that fit into it? Are we keeping the brain broken? Or are we buying time to heal the brain and the behaviors and all those other things, the psychology, all of that kind of stuff. And MAT is a reality, and you're going to have to deal with it out there. So you better be on top of it. Does a family member think that the medication is going to fix the disease? Is that going to affect their ability to follow through with interventive suggestions you may want to make? Okay, you'll see what I'm saying, how easy it is to get off in all sorts of different directions with this. So that's something. That gets us down to another topic on the list here, and that is special intro and exit groups. Now, assuming that your staff is well trained on the biobehavioral elements of the disease, and they've got it all, that doesn't mean that you're getting it across to your families, okay? So it's a good idea to create consciously some ways to do that. Let me give you some examples, and then I'm going to ask you if y'all have some examples of things you've done and or things you can think of. You may not have done it, things you can think of. Give you some examples. In the present adult program, Lifeway, when a family comes, we have an initial thing called a strategy appointment. Okay, the strategy appointment is just that, to put together a big plan, the big plan to fight the war with the disease, the strategy. And it will discuss tactics, it'll discuss logistics, what resources and all those things. But before we get too far into that, there's about a good 45 minutes, maybe longer, that is spent trying to get across to the families the biobehavioral nature of the disease, to introduce them to to introduce them to why we do what we do, how that matches up with the biobehavioral research, the research on the biobehavioral side of things, etc. Now, here's the question. How effective do y'all think that is, that conversation?
I'd have to say probably not effective. Their mind is probably elsewhere. They're looking for the quick fix normally.
That they are. And that looking for the quick fix is indicative of the lack of understanding.
Yeah.
That right there. And they are so, a lot of times they're afraid, they can't hear anything because of the fear, etc. Well, is it pointless to do it?
No, I believe you're planting the seed.
That's what we believe too. That's why we have developed this and continue to do it. I think I told y'all before, for a decade in APGs, the first appointment was always with the person using. And then we started to realize, wait a minute, before I go in there with that 18-year-old that hates me and wants to slap me, I better make sure I have the family, somewhere lined up and everything, so I can get some information also before I go in. So there's a trade-off, but after that decade, it's rare to do it the other way now. I'm not going to say it never happens, but it's not the rule. So we know that when they come out, they've only picked up a little bit of stuff. So where else can we attack the issue? And where else can we present the facts? What other places can we do learning for them through?
Parent family groups.
In the groups. But you're right.
No, I was going to say family peer support.
You're right. If you're going to do that, though, then you're going to have to decide ahead of time when and how to make sure that this subject comes up. Because family groups can become very dumpish, let's just dump whatever's going on. I just want to come here and dump. And somehow you got to eke in that information, and a well-trained staff member that's running a group will periodically make sure that falls into things, as well as the opportune times. You're sitting in the family group, you're listening, and you see an opportune moment to touch again on the fact that we're dealing with brain damage that produces aberrant psychology, which produces more brain damage, which produces more aberrance, on and on and on. Just to insinuate that again, because you never know when you're going to have that fertile moment when that seed you plant actually takes root. What is another thing you can do?
We've been doing book study with our family group. So reading a book and then discussing it in group.
Books are good. Book study is a good thing to do. Do y'all do a rotation on a book, or do you do different books at different times?
Well, this is our first time doing book study. So what we were doing is reading through several books. We're in the second book right now to choose, collectively choose a book that we would ask new parents to do book studies with going forward.
Good. Well, you're hitting on another tool then, and that is these special intro groups, okay? One of the things I have seen used is something called we called it the climbers group, all right? And climbers group is usually about 6 weeks long. I mean, six sessions long, typically, sometimes up to 10. And it would be when they first came in, and this group would gather with the other families. The families would gather with other families who were new. Now, this was paired with another group with the new people, all right? And they would come for 8 to 10 weeks. And what would happen is in the contact, we called that the contact group. In the contact group, we would find out what was going on with the clients. And then we'd go into the climbers group and we would share, what was appropriate of that situation or pull it out, And while we were doing that, though, we were also slamming biobehavioral realities, whenever possible, bringing that up over and over and over again. So that is another possibility, and pairing those two groups is even more effective than doing one of them by itself, because you're really working back and forth and delivering. Notice I said they were separate. This is the way that typically, historically, we have operated to put people in their first couple of months, 2 or 3 months in the program with families together in a room usually turns into a shouting match and not all that productive except for the dump element. There's some dumping that gets done, but usually more issues are brought up than are resolved. What we had found, though, is once everybody learns the language of recovery and starts to adopt some of this stuff, and we know that we're not actively despoiling the neurology with present use, when we do that, then bringing them in together for a family session or something seems to be more productive. Not to say there aren't times that you got to bring them in for something that's absolutely critical, that kind of thing. But typically, that was the process we went with. Since we've jumped down to special intro groups, let me tag up with exit groups also. So the pattern we watched in the programs I've been around is over time, you might have a client that does really well. They'll be 13 months sober, and you're getting ready to discharge them. Maybe 18 months. So they've met all the discharge goals. It's time to discharge them. Well, families have a tendency to go, okay, everything's fine. Well, no, no, you can't just do that. So what we would do at the time is we would have an exit group, some exit meetings. And these were the families of groups of the individuals, rather, that were getting ready to discharge. And what we would do in those is very similar to what we would do in the beginnings. We'd go back over all of the process, what it is, how it works, et cetera. And we would touch again on the biobehavioral levels and help the families put together a discharge plan also, but base it on what we know about the disease, and how it works and what we've seen work, et cetera. Other ideas, guys, those are the things I have seen, I would love to hear something else. Yes, Robin.
So one of the things that helped me and Jason early on was when our facilitator, during contacts and climbers, we went to every meeting, every session, but he got out the whiteboard and he drew you know, visuals were really important, at least to me. I know they are to a lot of families. So he drew the neurotransmitters and how they get muddied. And it was the first time I'd really understood it. The way that he presented it was dumbed down so I can get it, right? And hearing it repeatedly throughout the years that we were in Lifeway was really helpful. It helped me remember when I got resentful with my kid. Oh yeah, there's a reason. So one thing I wanted to ask you, Crystal Collier has just a wonderful presentation. I've seen it in person twice. Do you know if she has something like that she can share, or that APGs
She
can?
has a book. You might contact her. I don't know if the book has gotten published yet or not. It was right on the verge of being published. Would you ask her?
Yeah, because it would be
Okay.
great if she would put together like a PowerPoint that
Yeah.
APGs could buy from her or a license or something, because it's powerful and it would keep everybody on the same page, you know?
That would be wonderful. Yeah, if you'll check with her, let's see. You know, she's always been pretty open with all of these things.
Yeah.
But if she had a book or something, that would be awesome too. I have a graphic. Have I sent that to y'all? The biobehavioral circle. It doesn't hit heavy on the neurology, but it is. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick. Let's give it to you guys. But it shows the relationship between what's going on with the brain and what's going on with the behaviors. All right, let's see.
I really think those are the kind of resources that new APGs need to have. Things to share with their families that they can take home.
Oh, there it is. Okay. All right. Hold on. I'll show you all this. Share screen. What happened to it? I just had it up. Where did it go? Okay, for some reason, it's not coming up. While I'm poking around with this, there it is. Try once again.
Heidi, I can see that you're fast and furiously trying to research Crystal
There it
Collier's
is.
book, aren't you?
Actually, I was just writing down some of the notes, around some of the things that folks had said, like the book study and so forth.
It looks like she has an infographic guide coming out in the fall. I just sent you the link on the website.
Can y'all see this on my screen? Can you see this? Okay. So, and this actually translates to the emotions. You know, the neurology translates to the, feelings of euphoria, and it comes back around and around and around, and it matches up with the story we talk about. That day you've broken your neurology, that day you wake up and you feel a little bit off. You feel, but you don't go, oh, I've broken my neurotransmitter system. You blame it on something. So there you go, school. But see, it's got the peers and those guys. Y'all are welcome to this anytime, anything like that. Just please remind me though, and I will shoot it out. Okay. All right. Any other things on that?
Well, so one thought that I've had is, as I've been developing tools for our APGs to get started here in New Hampshire. One of the things that I did is drafted what I'm calling an interest and talent survey for youth to take to give their input regularly on different activities that they may want to engage in. And I had a section on this form that I just pulled up the form to see what's in there. And I have a variety of family activities that include like some family fun activities, because I think a big piece of this is, you know, helping families relearn how to connect and have fun together. But then I also have some things like, you know, it'd be really helpful to learn communication skills or stress management or health and wellness. So I didn't word it, you know, exactly the way you did, but the impact of substances on the brain and behavior, recovery planning, recovery supports. So I just added book study to that list because, you know, I've heard it several times as well. And so I think that, you know, I guess I wasn't really thinking until now that it would be really important to make sure that we're using this talent and interest survey with families as well to get their input about what activities would be most meaningful for them.
Cool, cool. Well, guys, I hate to say this, but guess what? Man, these times go so fast. I swear. I hope y'all don't mind that in the beginnings, as we're waiting for folks and everything, I love talking with y'all and just hanging with you. So I know I'm not like drilling into the knowledge base immediately. And if you want that, I'm sorry, I'm not your dog. I just can't do it. I can't do it. I see people I haven't seen in a week or two, and it's so cool. I want to say hi and spend a little time. We didn't cover several other things here, and Heidi, I don't know, Robin, if we had specific schedules, and man, there's one here I definitely want to get into, and that's parent use themselves, enthusiasm. You touched on that though, Heidi, and I would like to develop that a little further, and siblings groups and how to build traditions. So I'm going to suggest we do a part 3 of families. Are y'all okay with that? Is that okay? All right. I will see you guys next week. I love you. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks, John.
You guys are awesome. You make my week.
Thanks, everybody.
It's my favorite thing to do each week. Thank you.
Hi.
Can you
Good
also
day.
send me the recording from last week? I didn't get the info.
Last week we didn't have one.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
That's when my doggie got sick.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
he's okay. He's okay. But thank you.
Right.
All right.
Okay. Thanks
Take
a
care,
lot.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.